The sky over Dixon, Kentucky carried that heavy, humid stillness that always seemed to come right before a storm, the kind of tension that made the air feel thick enough to slice. And maybe it was fitting, because the tension between Amy and Tammy Slaton had grown into its own kind of storm, rumbling silently in the distance until it finally cracked open for the whole world to witness. Explosive new footage from 1,000-Pound Sisters Season 8 didn't just tease drama, it exposed a deep, painful rift between Amy and Tammy that looked far more serious than anything fans had seen before. In the trailer, a carefully edited montage of heartbreak, rising voices, and unspoken resentment, TLC didn't even try to hide it. This season wasn't just another chapter in the sisters' lives. It was the unraveling of a bond that once felt unbreakable. Amy Slaton had always been the softer, gentler one, emotional, easily overwhelmed, and guided by her desire to be loved and understood. Tammy, on the other hand, had always been fierce, stubborn, sharp-tongued, and vulnerable in ways she rarely admitted aloud. Their dynamic was messy, complicated, and full of history, some beautiful, some bruised. And now, in the Season 8 teaser, those old wounds began to split open. The camera cut to Amy wiping sweat from her forehead as she tried to decorate Brian's house for a family gathering. Tammy sat on a chair in the corner, arms folded, eyes narrowed in a mixture of annoyance and hurt. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. The teaser didn't show what was said, but the body language alone spoke volumes. Even in real life, sibling rivalry was normal, expected. But with the Slaton sisters, it wasn't just rivalry. It was history. It was pain. It was two women trying to grow into themselves while still trying to carry each other. Their feuds with Amanda had already played out on screen, slamming doors, sharp words, tears, and frustrations. Fans had commented endlessly online, criticizing the chaos, the shouting matches, the hurt that seemed to spill everywhere. But nothing compared to what was coming now. The teaser flashed back to one of the most unforgettable conflicts, the day Amanda threw Tammy out of the guest house. It started with a comment about chores and ended with Tammy storming out, furious and humiliated. For weeks, she didn't have a stable place to stay until Chris and Brittany offered her their home. Even then, the chaos continued. Arguments grew like weeds, fast, thorny, consuming. And now, in the present, something new had broken between Amy and Tammy. The trailer cut to the sisters sitting across from each other at a dining table. Amy's eyes were red, her voice strained. Tammy looked away, jaw tight, refusing to even meet her sister's gaze. Viewers could feel it. This wasn't a small argument. This was something deeper, something raw. The narrator's voice droned over the scene, dramatic and heavy. For the first time ever, sisters may walk separate paths. It was enough to silence every fan. Chris later revealed in the teaser that Amy and Tammy had stopped talking completely for 2 months after a massive argument. Not a simple fight, a breaking point, a fracture. A group chat argument, according to Chris, had exploded so badly that the whole family was still tense. Tammy had told the cameras, her voice soft and trembling, "She should be my best friend." And when she said it, viewers could see the pain flicker in her eyes. Amy, meanwhile, sat with Misty and Chris, shaking her head. "I'm not going to sit here and have you feed me this bologna when I don't even like bologna." Her frustration was sharp, but her heartbreak was sharper. Their relationship wasn't just strained, it was wounded. And just as the tension reached its peak, the trailer shifted, the music softening as glimpses of Tammy and Amy's romantic lives flashed across the screen. Brian standing beside Amy. Andrea smiling at Tammy. Soft lighting. Timid smiles. Hints of love, hope, and possibility. Yet, even those moments were tangled with conflict. Amy wanted a haunted house wedding, something spooky and unforgettable. Her family didn't approve. Tammy wanted Andrea to consider marriage someday, smiling shyly as she wondered aloud if her partner would ever propose. Both sisters were trying to build something new, something beautiful, but old wounds kept pulling them apart. The trailer continued with emotional glimpses, Tammy talking about feeling lighter, freer after losing weight, Amy struggling to juggle wedding planning, raising her sons, and keeping her emotions together. Chris trying desperately to mediate peace between the two sisters. But the heartbreak was clear. They weren't just arguing. They weren't just annoyed. They were drifting. For the first time, fans questioned whether the Slaton sisters, the heart of the entire show, might not find their way back to each other. And this was only the beginning. The wind picked up that afternoon in Dixon, as if the world itself sensed the rising tension between the Slaton sisters. Clouds drifted slowly across the sky, casting shifting shadows over the fields, the roads, and the little neighborhoods where everyone knew everyone else's business. And in the center of that small Kentucky world, the Slaton family's latest storm was gathering force. Amy sat alone at her kitchen table, a cup of cold coffee untouched beside her. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. The boys were with their grandmother for the day, giving Amy a rare moment of peace, but peace didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt empty. It felt like silence had become an unwelcome reminder of everything she didn't want to think about. She rubbed her temples. Her heart felt heavy, and even though she tried to distract herself with wedding checklists and house chores, her mind kept returning to the same thought. Why did everything with Tammy always hurt so deeply? The trailer replayed in her mind. The argument. The silence afterward. The months without a single sisterly phone call. It had never been like this before, not even during their worst fights. Tammy had always been stubborn, always loud, always defensive. But she had also always been there. Somewhere beneath all the shouting, all the chaos, all the tears, there had been love. Now, it felt like that love had thinned into something fragile. Something that might snap at the wrong word. Amy pulled her knees up to her chest on the chair. She hated fighting. She hated the way her chest tightened when she thought about Tammy's face in the teaser, the way her eyes had looked glassy, almost defeated. She should be my best friend, Tammy had said. And as much as those words hurt, they were also true. But hurt didn't make anger disappear. Across town, Tammy sat outside Chris's house, wrapped in a blanket even though it wasn't cold. The porch swing creaked under her weight as she rocked back and forth, staring at the gravel driveway. She wasn't crying, not really. Tammy never let tears fall easily. But her throat felt tight, her chest heavier than usual. She replayed the fight in her head. Amy had called her controlling. Tammy had snapped back, calling Amy irresponsible. One accusation led to another, and suddenly everything they'd held back for years was erupting out of them like lava, hot, painful, unstoppable. Tammy hated how fast things escalated. She hated how easily anger seemed to pick her up by the throat and shake her until she couldn't think straight. And she hated even more that this time, she felt something break inside her. Something she didn't know how to fix. When the cameras had asked her about it, she'd said the truth without thinking. She should be my best friend. And she meant it, even if she was still too hurt to admit it out loud. Inside the house, Chris watched Tammy from the kitchen window. He sighed softly, concerned. He'd never seen his sisters like this, quiet, withdrawn, hurting in ways that didn't scream or slam doors but instead whispered into the corners of her room like ghosts. He walked out onto the porch and sat beside her, the swing groaning a little as it adjusted. "You ready to talk about it?" he asked gently. Tammy shook her head, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Not yet." Chris nodded. "Well, I'm here anyway." For a long time, they just sat there, the old swing gliding forward and back. A soft squeak. The rustle of leaves. The distant sound of a neighbor's truck starting up. Then Tammy whispered, barely audible, "I didn't think she'd actually stop talking to me." Chris swallowed. "You two are stubborn as mules. But you love each other. You'll figure it out." Tammy didn't answer. She wasn't sure she believed it yet. Meanwhile, across town, Amy opened her front door to find Brian standing there with grocery bags in both hands. He smiled when he saw her, his eyes warm and calm. He was a steady presence, even when she wasn't. "Thought I'd bring stuff for dinner," he said. "And maybe keep you from stress eating cereal again." Amy managed a weak laugh as he stepped inside. "Don't judge me." "I'd never," he teased, setting the bags down and giving her a quick, reassuring kiss on the forehead. Brian had been trying to lighten her emotional load for weeks now. He knew how much Tammy meant to her. He knew how deeply Amy felt everything. He didn't try to fix her problems, he just helped her breathe through them. As he unpacked groceries, Amy leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Do you think I was wrong?" Brian glanced at her. "About what?" "Everything," she said softly. "The fight. The things I said. The things she said. I don't even know how it got that far." Brian put down the bag of apples and walked over to her. He cupped her shoulders gently. "Babe, you two have both been carrying stuff for years. That kind of pressure doesn't just disappear. It pops. Loudly." She nodded slowly, though the ache in her chest didn't ease. "She needs you," Brian added. "And you need her." Amy looked away. "Not right now. I need space." "And you're allowed to have that," he said simply. She appreciated how calm he was. Calm in ways her life rarely felt. Meanwhile, Tammy stared at the trees at the edge of the lawn, feeling the weight of silence pulling at her. She wondered what Amy was doing, wondered if she missed her, wondered if they'd ever laugh together like they used to. A part of her refused to admit how much she wanted that back. But another part, the hurt part, felt too tired to try. When night finally came, both sisters lay in their separate bedrooms miles apart, staring at their ceilings, thinking the same thought. How did we get here? The answer wasn't simple. It stretched back through years of pain, sacrifice, trauma, loyalty, resentment, and unconditional love, twisted together like a knot neither knew how to loosen. And Season 8 would show every tangled thread. The silence that settled over the house after the confrontation felt strangely alive, pulsing through the walls like a second heartbeat. Amy moved toward the kitchen without thinking, her mind spiraling in 100 directions at once. The refrigerator hummed softly, the only sound anchoring her to the moment, but even that felt like it belonged in someone else's life. She reached for a glass of water, her hands still trembling, and watched the liquid swirl under the light as though it held some kind of answer. Every corner of the kitchen carried memories, Michael cooking breakfast with Gage in his lap, the mess of spilled cereal on the counter from the morning they rushed to a doctor's appointment, the sticky note he once left taped to the cabinet that said, "Love you. Don't forget your keys." A simple note, but powerful enough to tighten her throat now. She remembered how proud she had been back then, convinced she'd finally built the kind of stable home she'd always dreamed of. She had imagined their home would be where her kids would grow, where their family traditions would begin, where laughter would never be overshadowed by doubt or pain. But standing there, in that same kitchen, Amy felt an unfamiliar emptiness settle around her like an unwelcome fog. She gripped the edge of the counter and closed her eyes, trying to steady the storm inside her. She didn't want the boys to hear anything else today. She didn't want to cry again before bedtime. She didn't want to be the mom who fell apart in front of her kids. She wanted to be strong. No, she needed to be strong because the moment strength slipped, everything else might collapse with it. But strength was slippery tonight, refusing to stay in her hands no matter how tightly she tried to hold on. She heard footsteps behind her, small, soft, hesitant. "Mommy?" Gage's voice was barely above a whisper. She instantly wiped her face and turned around, forcing a smile she wasn't sure would hold. "Hey, baby," she said gently. Gage's big eyes watched her for a moment, studying her face the way only a child can. He didn't know the details, but kids can sense when the air changes, when safety feels different, when the adults they trust are carrying something heavy. "Are you sad?" he asked, the innocence in his question slicing her deeper than any confrontation could. Amy knelt beside him and pulled him close, breathing in the familiar scent of lotion, crayons, and little boy warmth. "Mommy's okay," she whispered, even though she wasn't. "Just thinking too much." He wrapped his arms around her neck with that sincere, unfiltered love that made her eyes burn again, because no matter how broken she felt, her children still saw her as whole. When she finally stood up, she walked him back toward the living room where Glenn sat on the floor, babbling happily at his stack of toy cars. Amy sank onto the couch, watching her boys move with a kind of simplicity and joy she feared would be threatened by the chaos swirling around her. She didn't want their world shaken. She wanted them protected, sheltered, cherished, and she'd fight for that, even if it meant tearing apart pieces of her own heart to do so. Her phone buzzed from the armrest beside her. She picked it up, half expecting a message from Michael, an apology, a justification, or maybe something entirely useless. But it wasn't from him at all. It was from Tammy. What happened? You okay? Amy closed her eyes. Tammy could be blunt, chaotic, overwhelming, but she could also be fiercely loyal, the kind of sister who would drop everything when she sensed something was wrong. But Amy wasn't ready to talk yet, not because she didn't trust Tammy, but because she didn't trust her voice not to crack open everything she was trying to keep together. Before she could decide whether to reply, another message came in. If he did something stupid, you better tell me. I swear, Amy. Amy smiled despite everything, a small, tired smile that carried the weight of years of shared battles. Tammy's protective anger was loud, sometimes too loud, but it always came from a place of love. Still, Amy needed time. She needed clarity. She needed to breathe before she explained anything to anyone else. Across the room, the front door creaked. Her muscles tensed instinctively. She thought Michael had returned, ready to argue again, but it wasn't him. It was Amanda, her expression sharp with worry, taking one look at Amy's face before closing the door behind her with a soft but decisive click. You want to tell me why you look like you've been holding up the whole world alone? Amanda asked quietly, dropping her keys on the table. She wasn't the type to sugarcoat anything, but her tone tonight was softer than usual, carrying that older sister intuition that always made Amy feel both exposed and cared for. Amy swallowed hard. For a moment she didn't speak, didn't move, didn't trust her voice. She just stared at Amanda, the weight of the truth pressing against her chest like a stone she couldn't drop no matter how heavy it felt. Amanda stepped closer, her eyes narrowing, not with judgment, but with the kind of concern that demands honesty. Amy, what did he do? The dam cracked. Not all the way open, not enough to drown her, but enough that Amy felt her breath shudder as the truth began forming on her tongue, each word sharper than the last. He's been talking to someone, she whispered, her voice breaking in the middle. Someone else. Amanda didn't flinch. Her jaw tightened, her fists curled, and a fierce, protective fire ignited in her eyes, something primal, something older than all their shared history. He what? Amy nodded weakly, and Amanda's expression shifted, her anger folding into something steadier and more controlled. She sat beside Amy, placing a hand on her shoulder, not pushing, not pulling, just anchoring her. You're not going through this by yourself, Amanda said firmly. And for the first time all day, Amy exhaled like she believed it. Amanda stayed beside her in silence for a moment, letting Amy breathe, letting the truth settle instead of shattering her all at once. The quiet between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was grounding, the kind of silence sisters share when words aren't strong enough yet. Amy stared ahead, her eyes unfocused, watching Gage drive a toy truck along the couch cushions as though nothing in the world could disturb his little universe. Part of her wished she could step back into that innocence for a single minute, just long enough to forget the ache in her chest. How long? Amanda finally asked, her voice low, steady, and far calmer than Amy expected. It wasn't the explosive reaction Amy feared. It was the measured one, the kind that meant Amanda was processing everything, preparing herself, thinking 3 steps ahead. I don't know, Amy whispered. I only found out today. She rubbed her thumb across the ridge of the phone case. He didn't even deny it. That's what hurts the most. Amanda inhaled deeply, her jaw tightening again. Of course he didn't deny it. Men like that, when they get caught, they don't plan their way out. They just freeze. They sink. And then they hope you'll take pity on them. She shook her head sharply. But you're not doing that. Amy looked down, her fingers twisting into the fabric of her shirt. I don't even know what I'm doing. Yes, you do, Amanda said firmly. You're trying to protect your kids. And yourself. And that's the right thing. The words hit deeper than Amy expected. She wasn't used to being told she was doing the right thing, not when it came to relationships. She had always been the one who forgave too easily, the one who overlooked flaws, the one who believed in potential even when reality told her otherwise. She wanted so desperately to build a family that she sometimes ignored the cracks forming beneath her feet. But this betrayal, was a crack she couldn't step around. She swallowed hard. I keep thinking, what did I do wrong? Amanda immediately turned toward her.
No, don't even start that.
You didn't do anything wrong. You've been taking care of those kids basically on your own. You've been working, filming, dealing with everything life throws at you. Her voice softened. If he wanted out, he could have said it,
but he chose to sneak around instead.
Amy closed her eyes, letting those words settle. She wished they healed instantly, but pain rarely moved that quickly. It lingered, tangled, reshaped itself into new forms that hurt differently depending on the hour. Glenn crawled toward her suddenly and lifted his arms, wanting to be held. Amy scooped him up, placing him on her lap. His small fingers explored her face, patting her cheek with curiosity. "Mama," he babbled, smiling wide as if he sensed she needed comfort and was determined to give it. The weight of him, warm and solid and innocent, grounded her in a way nothing else could. She pressed her forehead against his. "I'm okay, baby," she whispered again, though this time the lie didn't sting as badly. It felt like a promise instead, one she would find a way to keep. Amanda watched her quietly, her expression softening. "He doesn't get to break this family," she said, gesturing to the boys. "He doesn't get to take your peace. And he definitely doesn't get to make you feel like you're not enough." Amy exhaled shakily, nodding, not because she suddenly believed every word, but because she wanted to. Sometimes wanting to believe something was the first step toward actually feeling it. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Not a text this time, a call. Amy didn't want to look, but curiosity tugged at her. When she did glance down, her heart sank. "Michael." Amanda leaned forward. "Don't answer." Amy hesitated. Her thumb hovered above the screen. Letting it ring felt powerful but also terrifying. What if he wanted to apologize? What if this could still be fixed? What if? But then she remembered his face earlier. The blankness. The guilt. The refusal to look her in the eye. She locked the phone without answering. When she looked up, Amanda gave her a proud nod, one that felt like a small piece of strength slipping into Amy's chest, steadying her heartbeat. "You did the right thing," Amanda said. The phone buzzed again. Amy silenced it.
And again.
Silence. A moment later, the screen lit up with a voicemail notification. Amy didn't play it. She wasn't ready to hear his voice, especially not if it carried excuses. Amanda stood up suddenly. "You need a break from this house," she said decisively. "Pack the boys' bags. We're going to my place for the night." Amy blinked. "Right now? Right now?" Amanda crossed her arms. "You don't need him walking back through that door tonight. You don't need the boys hearing anything. And you sure as hell don't need to sit here waiting for him to figure out what to say." Amy opened her mouth, unsure what to argue. "But, no buts," Amanda cut in. "You're not alone. So don't act like you have to be." Those words washed over Amy like warmth after a long cold day, unraveling some of the tension knotted inside her. Leaving the house felt sudden, overwhelming, but also necessary. The walls felt heavier with every minute that passed, and she knew Amanda was right. Staying here tonight would be like trying to sleep with a storm cloud hanging directly above her. She stood slowly, bouncing Glenn in her arms as she glanced around the room, the toys scattered across the carpet, the blanket draped over the sofa, the framed photos on the wall showing happier times. The home she built. The home she tried to save. And yet this wasn't the night to fight for it. Tonight was for breathing. "Okay," she finally whispered. Amanda's shoulders relaxed with relief.
"Good."
As Amy gathered the boys' clothes and diapers into a bag, she felt a strange mix of exhaustion and determination weaving together, a fragile strength, but strength nonetheless. She moved through the house with slow, deliberate steps, each one feeling like she was reclaiming a small piece of herself. And as she buckled the boys into their car seats, locking her house behind her, the night air felt different against her skin. Cooler, clearer, freer. It was the first time all day she felt like she wasn't drowning. The drive to Amanda's house was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine and the occasional coo from Glenn in the back seat. Streetlights flickered by in long, glowing stretches, casting stripes of gold across Amy's face as she stared straight ahead, her fingers gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. The boys had fallen asleep almost instantly, too young to understand the tension in the air, too innocent to feel the heaviness pressing down on their mother's chest. Amanda followed behind her in her own car, headlights steady and reassuring, like a silent guardian making sure Amy didn't drift too far into her thoughts. Each turn they made felt like a slow unwinding from the chaos of earlier, but the ache remained, curled quietly beneath Amy's ribs. When she finally pulled into Amanda's driveway, she sat there for a moment with the engine off, staring at her hands. They trembled slightly, not from fear anymore, but from the emotional exhaustion that settled in once the adrenaline had faded. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply as the night air filtered through the cracked window, cool and grounding. Amanda tapped gently on her window. "Come on, honey," she said softly. "Let's get inside." Amy nodded and stepped out of the car. Amanda opened the back door and lifted Glenn into her arms while Amy carried a half-asleep Gage. The boys didn't stir much. They trusted the adults around them, unaware of the fracture forming in the world Amy once fought so hard to protect. Inside, Amanda's home felt warm and safe. The subtle scent of lavender hung in the air, and the soft glow of table lamps made everything feel calmer. She guided Amy to the couch.
"Seat. Breathe."
"I got the kids," Amanda said, gently but firmly. Amy didn't argue. She sank into the cushions, letting her body relax for the first time in hours. She listened as Amanda carried the boys to the spare room, whispering to them softly as she tucked them in. Her sister had always been loud, wild, unfiltered, but when it came to the children, she had a tenderness few people ever got to see. When Amanda returned, she handed Amy a glass of water. "Drink. You need it." Amy took a sip, her throat tight. "Thank you," she said quietly. "No thanks needed," Amanda replied as she sat across from her. "I know you want to talk, so whenever you're ready." Amy stared down at the glass, watching the water ripple. I thought this time would be different," she whispered. "I thought he loved me for real. I thought he loved the boys. I thought," her voice cracked, "I thought I finally had something good." Amanda leaned forward, voice low and patient. "You do have something good. Look at your boys.
Look at who you are now.
Look how far you've come. Don't let a man's mistakes make you forget your worth." Amy swallowed back tears. "I just wanted us to be a family." "You are a family," Amanda said. "The boys and you, that's a family. And anyone who wants to be part of that, they'd better show up. Every day.
No excuses.
No lies." Amy rubbed her eyes with the heel of her palm. "How am I supposed to explain this to the kids someday?" "Truthfully," Amanda said. "With love. And with proof that you never let chaos define their lives." Amy let out a shaking breath, letting Amanda's words settle into the cracks of her heart. Then Amanda's tone shifted slightly, becoming cautious. "Do you want to hear the voicemail he left?" Amy's chest tightened. She had avoided it on purpose. But now that she was in a safe place, surrounded by someone who genuinely cared, she felt strong enough to face it. She unlocked her phone, pressed on the voicemail icon, and put it on speaker. A long pause came first, the kind that already felt guilty. Then Michael's voice filled the room, quiet, hurried, uneven. "Amy,
I'm sorry.
I messed up. I didn't know how to tell you. Please just call me back. I need to explain."
I'm sorry.
That was it.
No tears.
No real remorse. No details. Just a short, panicked attempt to ease his conscience. Amanda scoffed, shaking her head. "Coward." Amy didn't respond immediately. She sat still, letting the voicemail echo in the room before it faded into silence. Her eyes were unfocused again, her heart torn between anger, sadness, and relief. He doesn't even sound sorry, she whispered. He's sorry he got caught, Amanda corrected. That's not the same thing. Amy nodded slowly. She knew Amanda was right. Deep down, she had felt at the moment she confronted him that he wasn't devastated about hurting her. He was devastated about losing the comfort of the life she provided. Amanda shifted closer. You don't have to decide anything tonight. You don't have to think about divorce or forgiveness or anything big. Tonight is about rest. Tonight is about you remembering that you're not alone in this. Amy exhaled shakily. What if he keeps calling? Block him for tonight, Amanda said immediately. You can unblock him tomorrow if you want to talk.
But tonight?
Protect your peace. Amy hesitated for only 3 seconds before pressing the block button. A strange feeling washed over her. Not triumph, not anger, but a quiet clarity. A moment of stillness in the storm. Amanda smiled softly. Good girl. Amy let her shoulders relax a little. For the first time since discovering the truth, she didn't feel like she was falling apart. She felt held, supported, safe. Amanda stood up. Come on. I made up the guest bed for you. You're sleeping here tonight, and I don't want to hear any arguments. Amy followed her down the hallway. The room was small but cozy, with a quilted blanket on the bed and soft light spilling in from the hall. She sat on the edge of the mattress, running her fingers over the fabric. Amanda hovered in the doorway. You want me to stay with you until you fall asleep like when we were kids? Amy let out a tiny laugh, her voice fragile. Maybe, yeah. Amanda came inside and sat next to her. The room filled with a quiet that wasn't heavy but comforting, as if the silence itself wrapped around them protectively. You're stronger than you think, Amanda whispered. Amy leaned her head against her sister's shoulder. For the first time all day, she finally believed it. Morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, casting soft golden stripes across the neatly made guest bed where Amy had slept. For a moment, she didn't move. She let herself lie still, listening to the quiet hum of the air vent and the distant chatter of birds outside Amanda's window. It had been a long time since she'd woken up without the sharp sting of anxiety sitting on her chest. She blinked slowly, stretching her fingers against the quilt. A strange sense of calm settled over her. Not happiness, not yet, but something gentler than the night before. Something like a beginning. Footsteps padded down the hallway, and a moment later, Amanda appeared at the door, holding a steaming mug. You're awake, she said softly. Good. I brought you coffee. You look like you need 10 gallons. Amy let out a sleepy sigh. Thank you, she murmured, taking the cup. The warmth seeped into her hands like comfort itself. How'd you sleep? Amanda asked, leaning against the doorway. Better than expected, Amy responded. Did the boys behave? Oh, yeah, Amanda said with a smirk. Gage stole 3 bananas before 8 a.m., and Glenn drooled on my shoulder for 20 minutes straight. Normal stuff. Amy chuckled, the sound genuine this time. That's my babies. There was something grounding about the exchange, so simple, so normal. It reminded her that not everything in her life was broken. Some things were still whole. After a few minutes, she stood up, smoothing her clothes. I should get them dressed. And maybe head home. I don't want them to feel weird waking up somewhere else. Amanda nodded, though her eyes softened with concern. Take your time. I'm not rushing you out. Amy stepped into the hallway, the smell of pancakes drifting through the house. The boys were in the living room, Gage watching cartoons, Glenn gnawing on a teething toy with fierce determination. They both lit up when they saw her.
Nana.
Gage squealed, running into her arms. Amy scooped him up, hugging him tight. Morning, baby. Glenn stretched out his arms too, so Amy picked him up next, balancing both boys with practiced ease. They didn't know what she was going through, and she didn't want them to carry the weight of it. Their innocence was the one thing she refused to let heartbreak take from her. Once they were fed, changed, and ready, she packed their things into the car. Amanda walked her outside. You call me later, Amanda said firmly. Don't shut down. Don't disappear. I'm here whether you want a pep talk, a distraction, or a partner in crime. Amy smiled faintly. I know. Thank you for everything. Amanda opened her arms and Amy leaned in, hugging her tightly. The kind of hug only siblings could give. One part love, one part strength, one part silent promise. When Amy finally drove away, she kept the windows cracked. The cool breeze brushed her skin, waking her senses. As Dixon's familiar roads passed by, the town felt different, not smaller, not suffocating, just honest. A place where she had fallen apart so many times but had also learned to rebuild. Back home, Amy unlocked the door with a slow breath. The house was quiet.
Too quiet.
The kind of quiet that made memories echo louder. She looked around. The living room toys scattered across the rug, the photos on the walls, the folded blankets on the couch, and felt the ache return. But this time, it didn't swallow her whole. She carried the boys inside and set them up with snacks and coloring books. For a moment, she watched them on the carpet, coloring scribbles with furious focus. That alone gave her a sense of grounding. She grabbed her phone. Still blocked. Still no missed calls. Still no long, apologetic messages. Good. She wasn't ready for him.
Not yet.
Maybe not ever. She set the phone down and walked into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. The weight of last night's shock settled into something new, resolve. Not anger, not bitterness. Just a quiet, steady determination to protect her peace and protect her kids. The knock at the door startled her. It was too early for visitors. She wiped her hands on her jeans, checked on the boys, and then walked to the door, heart thumping. When she opened it, Tammy stood there. Her sister looked unsure, fidgeting, shifting her weight from one leg to the other. She was holding a small Tupperware container, mac and cheese, still warm enough for steam to fog the lid slightly. I made your favorite, Tammy said awkwardly. It's the good kind, with extra cheese. Amy blinked in surprise. Tammy hadn't done something like this in a long time. Not since before their fight. Not since before the hurtful words and the weeks of distance. Amy's mouth trembled. Tammy, what are you doing here? I heard what happened, Tammy said softly. And I didn't want to be the last one you called again. Or the last one to show up. Not this time. The sincerity in her voice cracked something open inside Amy. Tammy continued. I know we've been fighting. I know I said stuff I shouldn't have. I know I ain't been the sister you needed lately. But you're hurting.
And I
just want to be here.
If you'll let me.
Amy's eyes filled instantly. All the years of pain and love and chaos between them, all the walls they had built felt like they suddenly didn't matter as much. Before she could stop herself, Amy stepped forward and threw her arms around Tammy. Tammy froze, then hugged her back, tighter, like she had been waiting for this moment as much as Amy had. They stayed like that for a long, quiet moment. Finally, Tammy whispered, I'm sorry, sis. For everything. Amy shook her head into her shoulder. You're here. That's what matters. Tammy pulled back, sniffing. So, can I come in? Or are you gonna make me stand here with the mac and cheese like some sad casserole delivery lady? Amy laughed through her tears. Get in here. They walked inside together. For the first time in a long time, the Slaton sisters felt like themselves again. Not perfect, not fixed, but together. The moment Tammy crossed the threshold, the house seemed to shift. Not physically, but emotionally. The air felt warmer, fuller, like something broken had finally begun knitting itself back together. Tammy stood in the living room holding the Tupperware like it was some sacred offering. Gage looked up from the floor, his eyes widening. Aunt Tammy, he shouted, scrambling to his feet. Tammy's face lit up in a way Amy hadn't seen in months. Hey, booger butt, she said, opening her arms as he barreled into her. Glenn toddled over next, his chubby hands reaching up for the familiar comfort. Tammy crouched down, slowly, carefully, and lifted him into her lap. He squealed with joy, patting her cheeks like she was a long-lost toy. Amy watched, leaning against the doorframe. That tiny scene, her boys melting into Tammy's arms like nothing had ever been wrong, hit her harder than she expected. A warmth bloomed in her chest. Family, no matter how messy, chaotic, or fractured, had a way of returning to itself. Tammy stood, brushing crumbs off her leggings. "Okay, little monsters," she said. "Who wants some mac and cheese?" Both boys shot their hands into the air like they were volunteering for a mission to the moon. In the kitchen, Amy said, smiling softly. As Tammy heated the food, she moved around the kitchen with surprising, gentle purpose. Amy leaned on the counter watching her, really watching her. The weight Tammy had lost had changed everything. Her confidence, her mobility, her spirit, even the way she breathed. Tammy stirred the pot quietly before finally speaking. "Look, before anything else, are you okay?" Amy didn't answer right away. She stared at the fridge door, covered in magnets, kids' drawings, and a grocery list scribbled in a rush. "No," she said honestly. "But I will be." Tammy nodded, her voice dropping. "I was real mad at you, you know that.
And you was mad at me.
But I don't ever want you sitting alone feeling like you don't got nobody." Amy's throat tightened. "Same goes for you, Tammy." They exchanged a small, heavy look, one filled with everything they hadn't said during the last few angry months. When the boys were finally seated with bowls of steaming mac and cheese, the two sisters slipped onto the couch. For a moment, neither spoke. They just sat there, the sounds of cartoons and giggles filling the quiet spaces between them. Then Tammy inhaled slowly. "I'm gonna say something, and you can hit me with a pillow, if it pisses you off." "Oh, great," Amy muttered, bracing herself. "You didn't deserve what happened," Tammy said. "Not even a little bit." Amy blinked hard.
She wasn't expecting that.
Tammy went on. "You give people too many chances. You love too big. You forgive too quick. And the wrong people take advantage of that." Amy swallowed, her voice rough. "He was supposed to love me, Tammy." "I know." Tammy's voice softened. "But sometimes people fail at the one job they promised to do." Amy's eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't feel like weakness. They felt like release. "And you," Tammy continued, nudging her with a shoulder, "you ain't failing at nothing. Not as a mom. Not as a sister. Not as a woman starting over." Amy shook her head. "Starting over is scary." "You've done scarier," Tammy said. "Remember when we got stuck in that Walmart electric cart traffic jam? We survived that." Amy laughed, a real laugh that shook her shoulders. Tammy grinned proudly.
"See?
Healing begins with humor." Amy wiped her cheeks. "I missed you, Tammy." Tammy lowered her eyes. "I missed you too." There was a long pause where the room felt still and safe. Then Tammy exhaled sharply. "Okay, before I start crying like a Hallmark movie, I gotta tell you something else." Amy raised a brow. "What now?" "I broke up with Andrea," Tammy said bluntly. Amy's mouth dropped open.
"What?"
"Since when?" Tammy shrugged, but there was a tremble in her voice. 2 nights ago." Amy grabbed a cushion and smacked her arm lightly. "And you weren't gonna tell me?" "I was going to," Tammy protested, swatting her back. "I just needed to get my head right first." Amy leaned forward, studying her sister's face. Tammy wasn't heartbroken. She was relieved.
"Strong."
"Focused." "Are you okay?" Amy asked gently. "Yeah," Tammy said, surprising herself. "I actually am. Andrea's sweet, but she ain't my forever. And I'm not settling for someone who don't grow with me." Amy's jaw dropped. "Look at you, being emotionally mature and stuff." Tammy flipped her hair dramatically. "Girl, this is what healing looks like." Amy burst into laughter again, and Tammy joined in until both their stomachs hurt. The boys came running in, confused by the noise. "Why you laughing?" Gage demanded. "Because Aunt Tammy is silly," Amy said, pulling him onto her lap. "And I'm fabulous," Tammy added. Amy looked at her sister, really looked, and felt something settle inside her. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't drowning. She wasn't alone. She wasn't broken beyond repair. She had her boys. She had herself. And she had her sister back. The 3 ingredients she needed most. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast soft glows across the room, stretching long golden shadows that seemed to wrap the little family in warmth. It wasn't a perfect day. but it was a healing one. And for the Slaton sisters, that was enough. The house felt impossibly quiet after the storm of emotions that had torn through it earlier. Amy stood in the narrow hallway, one hand pressed against the wall as if she needed something solid to anchor herself. The silence didn't comfort her. It only made her thoughts louder, sharper, more tangled. Each breath she took felt like an act of willpower, something she had to consciously choose again and again, because the weight of everything pressing down on her was beginning to feel like too much for one person to hold. She could still hear echoes of the argument, her own voice cracking under pressure, the confusion in her children's cries, the shuffling of feet as doors opened and closed like the house itself was reacting to the chaos. She swallowed hard, trying to push it all away long enough to think clearly, but the memories kept replaying, each time adding new layers of hurt she hadn't even processed yet. In the living room, the lamp she'd turned on earlier cast a warm but somehow distant glow across the furniture. Nothing looked out of place, yet everything felt wrong. It was like walking into a familiar room after a tornado had torn through your life, not physically, but emotionally. She sank onto the couch, letting her hands fall into her lap. Her fingers wouldn't stop trembling. From the corner of her eye, she noticed Tammy watching her. Not staring, not judging, just watching with a kind of heavy concern that Amy wasn't used to receiving from her sister. Tammy's face was softer than usual, her eyes not sharp or defensive, but open. Worried.
Searching.
Amy, she finally said, her voice quieter than it had been in years. You ain't gotta pretend with me. Amy felt her throat tighten at the sound of those words. She opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. She closed it again, blinking rapidly, trying to hold back the emotions swelling behind her ribs. She had spent so much of her life stepping into the role of the fixer, the caretaker, the one who held the pieces together when everything else was falling apart. To hear Tammy, of all people, tell her she didn't need to be strong, it unraveled something in her. Tammy rolled her wheelchair a few inches forward, wheels whispering against the floor. She wasn't really good at verbal comfort. Everyone in the family knew that. She could be blunt, harsh even, sometimes saying things without realizing how deeply they cut. But in moments like this, rare, fragile moments, Tammy showed a side of herself the cameras didn't always catch. A side that was real and loyal and protective, even if she didn't quite know how to express it perfectly. You're acting like everything's fine, Tammy said softly. But your face, that looks like you've been holding your breath for hours. Amy let out a shaky exhale. I don't know what to do, Tammy, she whispered. I don't know what comes next. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel right now. Tammy nodded slowly, the quiet understanding in her expression proving she had finally reached a point in her own journey where she could hold space for someone else's pain. You ain't gotta know, she said. Not tonight. Not even tomorrow. Just don't go trying to carry this whole thing alone. The words landed heavily, unexpected, sincere, and grounding in a way Amy desperately needed. She leaned back into the couch, eyes drifting toward the ceiling as if searching for answers in the small cracks and patterns above her. But no answers came. Just more swirling thoughts. What if things never get better? Amy finally murmured. What if this is it? What if this is the breaking point? Tammy inhaled, her chest rising slowly, thoughtfully. Then you deal with it one piece at a time, she replied. Ain't nobody get through things like this in one go. You just breathe. And then breathe again. And then you lean on people who ain't gonna let you fall. Amy considered that. Tammy wasn't perfect. She never had been, but she wasn't wrong. There was a strange comfort in knowing that even after everything they'd been through, her sister was still here. Still fighting. Still trying. A faint sound from the hallway pulled their attention, the soft thump of small footsteps. Gage emerged, holding his blanket, his big eyes searching the room. For a moment, Amy froze. She didn't want him to see her upset. She didn't want him to carry any of this weight. But children always sensed more than adults gave them credit for. He walked straight to her, climbed onto the couch, and curled into her side without a word. His small hand rested on her arm, warm and grounding. Amy felt something inside her crack open, Not in a painful way, but in a way that allowed hope to slip through again. Tammy watched them quietly, her expression unreadable but undeniably gentle. Even she seemed moved by the sight. The room settled into a calmer, steady quiet, the kind that didn't hurt as much. Amy felt her breathing slow, her shoulders relax just a little. For the first time that day, she didn't feel like the world was collapsing. She felt held. Not fixed, not healed, but held. And for now, that was enough. The next morning, the sun spilled gold across Dixon, Kentucky, illuminating the quiet streets and the small homes that lined them. Amy stirred in her bed, feeling unusually rested despite the storm of emotions from the night before. She stretched slowly, savoring the calm that had settled in the house. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel heavy with tension. Instead, it carried a fragile sense of possibility. Gage's laughter echoed from the living room. Amy smiled, slipping from her bed and padding quietly across the carpet to see what mischief her youngest had gotten into. He was building a small tower with his toy cars, his concentration so intense that he hadn't noticed her yet. Glenn sat beside him, attempting to emulate his younger brother, carefully stacking blocks with tiny hands. The sight filled Amy with warmth, a reminder that no matter how chaotic life got, there was always a reason to keep moving forward. Tammy rolled into the room, Mia wheeling behind her with her usual supportive smile. "Morning," Tammy said, her voice softer than usual. She had shed some of the gruffness she wore like armor, replaced by a quiet determination that Amy hadn't seen in a long time. "You sleep okay?" Amy nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Better than I have in months. I think I'm starting to feel like me again." Tammy's lips twitched into a small smile. "Good. 'Cause that's who we need out there, both of us. Not broken, not hiding, not dragging the past behind us. Just us." Amy felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't realized how much weight she had been carrying, how much fear of disappointment had kept her from truly living. The sisters had been through so much: heartbreak, betrayal, family conflict, failed relationships, but somehow they were still here, still standing. Breakfast that morning was a quiet affair, just the two sisters, Mia and the boys. Plates of scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and whole-grain toast were set before them. Amy watched as Tammy carefully cut her food into manageable pieces, taking her time to savor each bite. It was a small moment, unremarkable to an outsider, but it felt monumental to Amy. It was Tammy caring for herself, choosing health, choosing life. After breakfast, Amy turned her attention to the next big challenge: planning her wedding. The previous nights had been filled with arguments, frustration, and doubt, but now she felt grounded enough to tackle the task with clarity. She spread out her notes across the kitchen table, stacks of invitations, floral arrangements, and a small notebook containing her haunted house venue ideas. Her mind was a whirlwind of excitement and nerves, but it felt different this time. Not overwhelming, but purposeful. "Need a hand?" Tammy asked, sliding her wheelchair closer. Amy hesitated, then smiled. "Actually, yes. Let's tackle this together." For the next several hours, the sisters sifted through ideas, making lists and crossing off details one by one. They laughed at old memories, teased each other about past mishaps, and even shared moments of quiet reflection. The tension that had once defined their relationship began to loosen, replaced by a tentative understanding that neither could thrive alone. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, bathing the room in warm light, Tammy leaned back and exhaled. "You know, Amy, we're never going to be perfect, but maybe, just maybe, we can be better." Amy looked at her sister, eyes glistening. "Better is enough, Tammy. Better is perfect for me." Later that evening, the sisters took the boys outside to the small backyard, letting them run and play as the golden light turned to soft twilight. The air was filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint hum of cicadas. Amy watched Glenn and Gage chasing each other, their laughter ringing out like a melody she had almost forgotten existed. Tammy sat beside her, quiet but present, watching the scene unfold with a small, satisfied smile. For a long time, they simply existed in the moment, letting the past slip away just enough to breathe, to imagine a future where family, love, and health were no longer burdens, but sources of joy. It was tentative, fragile, and delicate, but it was real. And for Amy, it was everything she had been searching for. As the sky darkened and the first stars began to twinkle, Amy felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had thrown them every conceivable challenge, yet here they were, still standing, still breathing, still capable of hope. She knew there would be more obstacles ahead, more heartbreaks and frustrations, but she also knew that together, she and Tammy could face them. Tammy nudged her gently with her elbow. "Ready for the next adventure?" Amy smiled, taking her sister's hand. "Always." And with that, the house settled into night, the soft sounds of children's sleep mingling with the gentle hum of the evening. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious to the quiet triumphs taking place inside the walls of the Slaton home. For Amy and Tammy, it wasn't just another night. It was a beginning. The morning arrived with a soft amber glow spilling over Dixon, Kentucky, painting the small town in the warm light of possibility. Amy woke to the quiet hum of the house, the boys still nestled in their beds after a long, adventurous night. For the first time in months, she felt a calmness that wasn't fragile or forced. It was steady, real, a heartbeat of hope she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Tammy rolled into the room soon after, her wheelchair gliding silently across the floor. "Morning, sis," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of warmth and determination. She looked different somehow, lighter, freer, as if the weight she'd carried for years had finally been lifted. Amy smiled, letting the moment linger. "Morning," she replied. "You ready for today?" Tammy's eyes sparkled. "Always. Let's finish what we started. No more excuses, no more delays. Just us moving forward." The sisters moved through the morning like a well-rehearsed dance, preparing the house, getting the boys ready, and tying up the final details of Amy's wedding plans. There was a sense of harmony now, subtle but undeniable. Arguments that once erupted over trivial matters now dissipated into laughter or gentle teasing. The household felt lighter, more vibrant, as though the air itself had shifted to accommodate their renewed bond. By mid-afternoon, Amy and Tammy sat together on the porch swing, watching Glenn and Gage play in the yard, their laughter carried by the gentle breeze. Amy took a deep breath, letting the sun warm her face. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought we'd get here. I never imagined us actually being okay." Tammy smiled, squeezing her sister's hand. "Neither did I. But here we are, stronger than before. We've survived the chaos, the heartbreak, the drama. And somehow we're still standing." Amy's gaze fell to the horizon, where the sky was painted with streaks of pink and purple. "It feels like a new chapter," she whispered. "Not just for me, for all of us. For the boys, for you, for me. For the first time, I feel like we can actually breathe." Tammy nodded.
Yeah.
"And this time, we're doing it right. No shortcuts, no hiding, no compromising ourselves for anyone else. We're living for us now." The day flowed into evening, and the family gathered in the living room to celebrate the small victories that had accumulated over the past months. Healthy meals, laughter, shared memories, and quiet moments of reflection filled the space. Gage and Glenn curled up beside Amy, while Tammy leaned against her sister, the weight of years of tension slowly melting away. Later, as night blanketed the town, the sisters found themselves alone for a moment, the house finally silent. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with tears, setbacks, and moments of despair. But now, at last, there was clarity. There was peace. Amy turned to Tammy, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Thank you," she said simply, "for never giving up, for always being there, even when it was hard. I couldn't have done this without you." Tammy shook her head, smiling. "No, sis. You did this. I just helped you see it. You're stronger than you know, and you finally believe it." The sisters sat together in silence, letting the weight of the past fall away and the promise of the future settle around them. The stars outside twinkled like tiny reminders that, even in darkness, light could always be found. Amy felt a deep sense of gratitude, a sense of completion. She had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and doubt, and yet here she was, whole, with her family, with her sister, with a life she was beginning to shape on her own terms. Tammy's presence beside her was a testament to resilience, to the power of family, and to the strength of sisterhood. Finally, Tammy whispered, "So, what's next?" Amy smiled, squeezing her sister's hand. "We live, we love, we heal, and we keep moving forward, together." The camera pulled back slowly, the Slaton home bathed in warm lamplight against the darkened Kentucky sky. Inside, the sisters laughed softly, the children giggling nearby, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the house was filled with hope, love, and the quiet triumph of survival. As the credits would roll in any story told for television, for Amy and Tammy, this was not an ending. It was a beginning, a new chapter, unwritten, full of promise, resilience, and unbreakable bonds. The 1,000-pound sisters had weathered the storms, faced their demons, and discovered a truth that no feud, betrayal, or hardship could ever erase. Family, at its core, was worth fighting for. And with that, the night in Dixon, Kentucky, settled peacefully. Tomorrow was unknown, unpredictable, but for the first time in a long time, it was theirs to embrace. Together.